Hey, our next presenter is Michael Wolf. So, recent graduate of UC and pursuing his MBA. Yeah, radical. Michael works at Kroger doing application performance management, and he's presented about a tool, which is like one of my favorite types of talks to see. So, I'm excited to hear about it. So, Michael Wolf.
Everyone hear me all right? So, first of all, thank you so much, Justin, for... Oh, is it?
These
a little.
Super quiet all day.
All right. Is that a little bit...
Talking to your chest.
Yeah, all right. So thank you so much, Justin, for putting this together, and thanks for everyone who's talked before me. Really awesome presentations. I don't want to get everyone's hopes up, but this is Mithören, and this is my senior design project that I put together with Colin Buckles, who happens to be here. So essentially, Mithören is a simple, extensible platform for wireless peripheral packet capture. That is a mouthful, but really I'm just taking wireless keyboards and using a bunch of different exploits that exist, and I'm just kind of putting it together. You just slap something on the ground, and it starts capturing. So I should really call this talk a little bit something different. We had about 8 months to put this together, and so there's still a lot of work I really want to get done on this project, but I just kind of really want to share a lot of the knowledge that I had with the very kind of surface level digging that I did with these exploits. A little bit about myself. So again, recent grad of UC. I was in the cybersecurity track, which was really awesome. I got in there right when it was starting. And I'm also pursuing my MBA, which is kind of like tied in there. It's cool. Kroger is who I'm working for presently. I think CIS is in the crowd. Thank you. Please don't tell my manager I did this bad. But again, this is my first talk, so cut me some slack. I'll start this off with a story of where we were in September. So we had to pick a topic for this. Colin and I have pretty similar interests. We had to make it kind of cool. We didn't want to be, have like a sucky project that we didn't want to present. We wanted to do something we really wanted to like learn about. We wanted this to be a really strong learning experience, even if it was going to turn out awful. So first idea, we like torrenting. Who doesn't? What.cd, and then blockchain stuff. Cool. Blockchain is awesome. Bitcoin is at $2,000 today. It's phenomenal. But that was way too dicey. How about a mixed network? I'd been reading way too many academic papers, and wow, mixed networks sound like an amazing way, like to apply algorithms I don't understand. Nah. How about a self-healing compute cluster? Let's just do Kubernetes, I guess. No, that's not security related. How about that's something we're interested in? Not that either. So Colin found this video from DEF CON DEF CON 2016. And it was attacking the unifying wireless keyboard protocol. And so it really struck us because he just goes through and just owns these keyboards. And like we have a lot of these keyboards. Like I was using this one at the time. So that was really something. But anyway, he called this Mousejack. And Mousejack is really, it's called Mousejack because he first used it on like the actual mouse, and then he also found that you could use it to crack into keyboards, which we found were a little bit more spicy for security people. When we approached this, we saw this awesome demo, and we're like, wouldn't it be awesome if we could just plop this down somewhere? But that's kind of boring. We wanted to do more than that and really kind of not really make a product, but make something more useful. So we started looking into similar exploits and what we could do from there. So of course, we just started digging into all the papers we could find, and a lot of these go back a couple years, but wireless keyboards haven't been around too long. So this is one of the big ones. This is probably the first one that came out. This was by Max Moser and Philip Schodel, and it was presented in 2008. But it targets a very particular type of Microsoft wireless keyboard. Well, it's like a whole line. You'll find these at Goodwill a lot. I think I might have brought one, but they were one of the very early ones, and they just had really, really poor encryption, and some of the implementations didn't have any encryption. So this game became known as Kikariki. I have a lot of links and stuff at the end that you can look up. So this is Kikariki version 1, and that goes on the 27 megahertz. They also made Kikariki 2.0, which is on the 2.4 gigahertz, and that is the same frequency that most of the other modern keyboards are on. Another really cool paper that we looked at was a Bluetooth keyboard attack. This was by students of the University of Minnesota. But Bluetooth is really scary. They couldn't actually. Bluetooth is like a pretty well-designed protocol. Even in 2010, all they could do was really do like a denial of service. And we had kind of heard some horror stories about how difficult Bluetooth was to break into. So we were like, okay, we'll kind of shy away from Bluetooth for now. Now this is like a really phenomenal paper. If you have a little bit of time and you really want to learn more about SDR and breaking into keyboards and stuff, 79 pages of analysis of the 2.4 gigahertz band. I think this actually looks at a couple different ones, but this looks at the Logitech keyboard here, which is kind of the foundation of their later unifying devices. There are YouTube videos of how they did exactly what they did. It's a really fantastic paper, except they're using almost all these people who've been attacking these protocols have used these USRPs, which are essentially these boxes made by like one company, and one of these boxes like a couple $1,000. So we're not about to drop that money just to get our bachelor's degree. But there are a lot more papers that we also looked at. So this is one of the really important blog posts by Travis Godspeed. And so what he did was he looked at the receiver and transmitter for a lot of these keyboards, which is the NRF24L01 Plus. And so this is used in almost all the modern keyboards, and it's also used a lot in amateur drones and all kinds of. It's a really awesome receiver, but it also will talk to anyone, and it's very, very good at connecting. It can connect, like kilometers away, and still hook up. So this is kind of another paper that we just kind of thought was cool. It was just using a mouse to reconstruct, using the packets from the mouse to reconstruct where the cursor was moving. Just kind of other interesting topics. If you're interested in the topic, you should definitely check out these. And finally, Key Sweeper, which was by Sammy Kankar. He really took the research about the NRF to the next level, applied it. Sammy put it in like a little dongle that you plug into the wall, and it just hacked the crap out of people. And that one was a really awesome exploit that really helped inspire us. Finally, we had Mousejack, which we'll talk about later, and it also works heavily off of the promiscuous research of the NRF. So essentially from this, we learned that there are about 4 types of attacks. There are about 4 types of attacks that can be done against keyboards. As you can imagine, there's eavesdropping, which is when there's no encryption applied on any of the packets. You'll rarely see this, only in like really budget models where Microsoft was alerted that they needed better encryption in like 2008. So you'd hope by now that their OEM products would have encryption. But a lot of I think Radio Shack for the longest time had keyboards. I don't know why Radio Shack had keyboards, but they had like no encryption, and so you could just, if you were listening on the frequency, you could pick up on the packets and identify them and even like replay them. The denial of service is pretty easy, where you just kind of flood a receiver with it's like basically like a SYNAC, except with the whatever protocol is being used. You have the replay attack. If they are not using an encryption key each time, it's going to. You can just send the packet and just keep spamming them with A, or gather that information and then use that to intercept and then send your own commands. So our big takeaways from this were there exist a lot of exploits already. We don't need to go and break things. Obviously, we don't have the money for that, or the kind of electrical engineering expertise as much as we'd like to. Maybe one day. But since these exploits exist, we don't really need to do that. We can take these tools and make something better than that. Also, we need to go to Burning Man at some point, because that's where Mark Newland first used Mousejack. Furthermore, we're going to buy some keyboards. So this is about maybe like we probably got like 10 times this many keyboards by the end of it. But in testing our stuff, these are all things that I either got off the internet or got at Goodwill. Some of them worked, some of them did not, but I ended up having way too many keyboards. And before I gave this talk, I took a bunch of these to the Cincinnati Computer Cooperative. Otherwise, I would have probably brought them just to kind of demonstrate how many keyboards are affected in the whole swatch of wireless keyboards. So, to Mithören. So, before I get any further, Mithören is German for to over here. I was like kind of teaching myself German at the time, so I was like, oh, cool, I can do this. Essentially, what we wanted to do was create a platform where we can connect all of these different exploits into a single kind of automated plug-and-play, kind of like for penetration testing or just researching, essentially just scanning an area for any sort of wireless keyboards that would be vulnerable to any of these attacks and any further attacks that would happen. So in our case, we used, drumroll please, a Raspberry Pi. It's probably in here somewhere. But we had these little guys that have gone to it. Well, I'll get more to that later. Of course, we had a stupid name. We also want to make sure it was open source. Everything we do and love is open source, and so please look at our code, make fun of it, fix it, help us. So essentially, we wanted something that was form factor that you could hide somewhere. Also, didn't want to suck too much electricity because it doesn't take that much. It's just a receiver, essentially. Sammy Kankar was able to cram it into like a little wall plug. So we also wanted it to be pretty device agnostic. So we wrote it in Python. Wanted it to be able to hop onto about any system. Furthermore, we wanted to make sure it was modular, so you could, in the future, hook more things into it, more exploits as they came out. We wanted to be open source, I'd mentioned. It's MIT licensed. Not exactly sure. The licenses are a serious thing, though. I think someone was taken to court over a new license recently. But anyway, this is kind of the slide we used during our presentation. Just sort of bring everything together so that it's constantly scanning all of these different vulnerabilities, and you don't have to do them either one at a time or none of them. Furthermore, just kind of wanted to raise awareness of all these wireless exploits. So why bother? Well, we had to pick something. Deadline was approaching. Not really. Radio is obviously a huge attack surface. Everyone here, I would hope, knows that. Radio is broadcast. It's the weakest form of physical layer communication. Furthermore, in a business context, if someone's bringing their own device and you're at a place that has important like passwords and user information, and you're not using MFA or other forms of authentication, certificate-based logins or anything, that's you can have a bad time. Furthermore, we thought this would be like an excellent tool for security research. Anyone who's developing these exploits can use this tool to kind of work off of, springboard into whatever they're working on. Furthermore, security research, there'd be like super elite hackers. Not really. I prefer that for not. But if you're working on that, the product right now is not particularly great at super elite hacking. So we made a cheesy demo. I'm not sure if this is probably going to play the music, but maybe I'd unmute that. But anyway, we went to Rose Street Cafe and made a cute little video. I don't know why Colin's using a wireless keyboard with his laptop, but it's for the sake of man in the middle. We wanted to just kind of display how it works to people who are non-technical. Also, I wanted to use Kden Live, and I used Kden Live. I really, this is the most fun I had on this project because I was like coding for a couple weeks straight, and I was like, I need to not be doing that. Shout out to Calce. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it again. That was great. So our software essentially just architected in a pretty standard Pythonic, hopefully, way, in which we have this user interface that can be accessible either locally or over SSH, and then that's connected into a daemon process, which is constantly scanning, reporting into a MongoDB database, and then from the menu, you can either query that directly or send it out as an email. We're hoping to get more integrations into other software as it comes out, but right now it sends it out in HTML or JSON. So I just kind of want to dive into the mousejack module a little bit. It's a really, really awesome exploit that's explained by Mark Newland. If you haven't taken the chance, he has an excellent fun video about it. But essentially, it is regarding the Logitech unifying dongles. These little guys. If you see that little star, it's unifying. And so this was about every Logitech unifying device early 2016 has this vulnerability in it. Excuse me. So it's all based off of that Nordic Semiconductor NRF24L receiver. And essentially, you can talk to it with either one of those dongles or one of these little guys that I brought up before. These crazy radio PAs were originally used for drones, and so they can reach like 2 or 3 kilometers, some crazy amount of distance with these, versus the little dongles, which can go a couple feet. But anyway, so you can get the little dongles for about $10. Flash Mark Newland's firmware onto them, or you can really shell out some big bucks to get the $30 one here, and that covers a really wide area. We obviously tested mostly with this. We got really good results, although we got some noise from my roommate's drone. So essentially, this is how Mousejack works. It tries to connect to these to the receiver, and once it's connected, you can pick up on the channel, on the keys that are being typed. And most keyboards have the main keys encrypted, but these, like the special keys, as well as mouse movement, mouse clicks, are generally not encrypted. We also did find that some keyboards were not encrypted, which is kind of upsetting. Most modern keyboards are more secure, though. But this allows for keystroke injection and possibly remote code execution if it's done particularly well. So essentially, once you are paired with the device, you can start sending stuff. If you intercept it and target it right, you can do a pretty perfect man in the middle. We weren't able to achieve that. I don't think Mark Newland was either, but moving forward, I feel like someone will be able to figure out how to do that pretty well. So it's kind of bad, but it's most of the manufacturers had responded to Mark Newland by mid to late 2016. Especially Logitech was really responsive, but a lot of the manufacturers who make really cheap Amazon crap just don't care. So those are probably still vulnerable. But even if Mousejack is mostly patched and covered up, there's still going to be more peripheral exploits coming out eventually. So I'd like to say a couple words from my perspective. I am just a lowly college student. But manufacturers are really sucky, as you've seen with like Mirai. They don't really care that much. If they're like a big American company, then they at least have to pretend to care a little bit. But if you're a company like that's just manufacturing things for American companies, then you really don't care that much. A lot of firmware is hard coded. Like you can't update a keyboard. Why would you ever update a keyboard? It's like, well, you should probably figure out a way to do that. I think Logitech did push a device for the Logitech unifying thing, but I don't think any customer would really. It's so much cheaper to just buy a new device than to fix your existing stuff. But obviously, as you can see in the IoT realm, manufacturers really need to get better at fixing their software and writing software that's secure. So that's another objective of this project. Furthermore, as someone who loves open source, I don't like proprietary protocols. Like Logitech would have never found this issue in their unifying device. They would have probably still classified it as a feature that it responds to anybody. But it really needs the open source community to look over it. A quick tangent. So I saw the movie Citizen Jane yesterday, which I'd highly recommend to anyone who's into city planning. Which I'm not sure how cybersecurity and city planning really merges, but it was a really fantastic explanation of how having, even if the housing was kind of shoddy or dirty, having apartments lying in the street where people could see onto the street made the neighborhood a lot more secure versus having really high-rise projects where someone on the 17th floor isn't going to be able to watch out for their kids playing down in the playground. So having eyes on the street at all times, no matter who they are, even if they're strangers, is better than having none, which is often what happens with proprietary protocols. So here's, I knew that it was not going to work if I tried to do a demo here, because trying to connect two devices over Secure Wireless is just a disaster waiting to happen. But here's a quick recording I did of logging in. And I also type very slowly, so forgive me. This is the menu. I did some beautiful ASCII art on this. But effectively, I wanted it to be a very familiar experience to anyone who used, Metasploit Kit or anything like that. The main features that we got ready in time for the expo were controlling the daemon, as well as running our one module that we got ready, which was MouseJack. And let's see, so that was, that's the log running from the MouseJack as it went through. And then also sending out an email. In this case, there's, oh hey Bo, that's my advisor's email. Say hi to Bo. Bo is a professor here in the, I think he's also in the network security team. Awesome guy, really highly recommend. And furthermore, you can send out an email in either JSON format or HTML. I could pull it up now, or I can just wait for me to kind of print the table of the found devices. And we took like a solid guess at what they were. I mostly practiced with the Logitech because I had the most luck with that. But furthermore, I will go through some of the challenges we faced. Certainly had a couple. Especially radio is hard. It's really hard to tell what's coming through your network. I didn't want to dig too deep into the assembly code that Mark Newman was using with MouseJack. But I feel like I definitely got a lot of noise at any time of day in my apartment, which I kind of had to filter out. And a lot of times it just wouldn't connect. It wouldn't connect. There'd be a lot of plugging and replugging this antenna in. And that's really coming from more of a businessy IT background. That was really difficult for me to understand, but it's definitely something that I enjoyed working through. Furthermore, Unix, GitHub, hate mods. Everything is myth-ren. I probably could have fixed that. Not worth it. Probably the hardest thing was I forgot everything when I came back from Berlin. But yeah, that kind of helped me also reorganize and see what the MVP for this product was. Let's see. Also, that killed me inside. I don't like making Gantt charts. My Gantt charts never timed out correctly. I prefer more like weekly planning. Also, as you can imagine, our demo failed. Every time we tried presenting, I couldn't even get this presentation to load up. But finally, I went into my BIOS and disabled the NVIDIA drivers. So we did pretty well at the IT Expo. We won the cybersecurity section. Even though they kind of mixed up our prizes with the networking team. So thanks. Was it CVTS that I think was a sponsor of that? Well, thank you. And we also had like a write-up from SecList. Someone had found our repo on GitHub in like November, and all we had committed was like a wire-up of the menu. It didn't work at all. I don't know why anyone thought that was a cool tool, but you could tell that they didn't try it. But thanks anyway to them. Also, my mother was very proud that I graduated. Soon. So moving forward, there's definitely a lot of work to do, and there's a lot a lot of potential I see with this project. Even if, first of all, I'd like to rewrite it in Go. I've got kind of obsessed with Go recently, but that's just me following the shiny. I would love to integrate more modules. To put in key sweeper and key kariki, all those, as well as anything new that's coming out. Furthermore, I'd like to work on exploits myself. I'd spend some money, get a USRP. That'd be a blast, probably. But better integrations of the tools make this tool more valuable. Rather than it is kind of just like a Raspberry Pi you set down and hack stuff. I'd like to make it really more of a legitimate tool. I don't aim to be Metasploit plus or anything. It's really, I'd love this to become a pretty powerful tool for anyone who's looking into wireless keyboards. Furthermore, if anyone's interested, let me know. That'd be great. Any help would be fantastic. So a quick thanks to everybody who helped out, and those researchers who are continuing to pwn things. Mark Newland of Bastille Research has a lot of really awesome stuff. Just gonna put a couple links. Before I dive into questions, I'll just kind of pull up some stuff from MouseJack. They do have this code here. So this is like the one module that we put together. What we did was we took their Python scripts and integrated it into our system. So like it had logic, if found, then it would launch into the sniffer and go and kind of pull back what it found. But it's like a really, really fantastic piece of software, and I highly recommend everyone check that out. Again, you can find our project at right here. Yeah, so any questions? I went like super short. I don't have a ton of content, but I definitely am interested if anyone has feedback or questions.
So mitigation, I can go wired only. I can maybe go Bluetooth. I can try to buy the newest and hopefully less insecure stuff. For existing wireless equipment, if I can flash the Logitech dongle to transmit for mouse jack, any ideas, or are you just stuck because the other end of the device is?
Yeah, you're pretty much screwed. You're at to buy a new one. I think Logitech released some sort of flash for the dongle, but that doesn't help the keyboard itself. It's really better just to either go wired or get a new keyboard. They're really not that expensive. Obviously, if you're doing it for the whole company, it would be. Usually,
Any other mitigation strategy?
yeah, I mean, there's really not much you can do. Honestly, it's kind of like those IoT devices. Like you're just kind of screwed. You just got to go buy another one or get your users to use something that's more secure. At least from my understanding, someone might have had a response, but radio is pretty rough in terms of if something's sending out stuff unencrypted, you're kind of screwed. So.
I never trust it.
Yes. Anything? Yep.
When you were doing your testing, did you find any other devices besides the ones you were looking for?
So I only picked ones that said like unifying on them, so I didn't go outside of that scope. A couple of these like were mentioned on Mark Newland's. I should pull that up, like the affected devices. That's a good point. But a couple of these were mentioned in the white paper. But which one was this Gigabyte one was Insignia was mostly they're mostly Delta. This is the one. So this is the Logitech K520. I think wasn't mentioned like specifically, but it's also a Logitech keyboard. Let's see if they have. They don't have it there, but yeah. So going to Goodwill, I just like grabbed a whole bunch, and a couple of them I did get. It was kind of like the ones that I did find. I think this one had encryption on the main keys, but these were like repeatable. Like I could have replayed, Go Home or something, which would be very annoying to a presenter. Actually, when Mark Newland first his first kind of dive into MouseJack was at Burning Man, and he'd rigged up this NES controller that would move the cursor of whoever was presenting. Like he intercepted that. So it's just a little trick thing to do, but turned into like a pretty decent exploit. Yep.
Do you have any tips on determining whether or not keyboards are encrypted?
Yeah, I mean the best thing you can do is fuzz it with a USRP. But yeah, if it's a Logitech unifying device, then you can flash Mark Newland's firmware on it, or use Sammy Kankar's. We're working on getting modules into that, and we'd love to be the source of testing if your devices are vulnerable. But right now, we like just have support for mouse jack. A lot of those kits are like pretty inexpensive, and they're a lot of fun to dig around with as well. But generally, like a good rule of thumb is if they're a lot like Bluetooth, they're pretty secure. I haven't seen anything that's too bad. I think the worst one I saw was like a denial of service. Really just listen to DEF CON and see if they tell you that something's extra hacked. So, there's always plenty of news coming out about vulnerable devices. Anything else? Oh, sorry.
Did you do any research or find any information on the strength of the encryption on the keyboards? Like, is there different encryption on different keyboards or anything like that? Is it low, high? Or?
Yeah, so one of the main issues that they found was that they use a static encryption key on a lot of these keyboards, which
So is it the same encryption key for all the keyboards, like one model? So if you hit one key, you have the key to change it, right?
Yeah. So that was one of the things that was found. I think that was we know what you typed last summer. That was like one of the things that they found. That was still around when Mark Newland was doing his research. Aha, here we go. Get into the affected devices real quick. Maybe it's right here. Might be on their website. I'll pull that up in a second. But yeah, another thing that they definitely saw was they're using almost all the modern keyboards that were encrypting. Like the main keys were using SHA-256, which is completely valid. Other than that, I think the really old Microsoft ones were doing something like MD5, just goofy, because that was back in the day. That was 2008. So more recent stuff, they kind of understand the importance of encryption. There we go. Let's see if this has any sort of speed. But obviously, there are a lot of keywords that enter the market that are not from major manufacturers, and I don't think anyone wants to take the time to look through all of them. It's best just to assume that they're weak. Anything else while this loads? Cool. Thanks, guys.